Hey, Blue, my mom here. I know she wants to be here for this. I know she wants to be here for this. Okay, I'll try calling her again. Hmm? Huh? No, she can't see them. But if they come by here, they can see them.
You're the first one, never mind.
Hey, Eric, I think Richard taught there almost some 20 years, right?
Yeah, are you a mom? Oh, okay, all right, because I know she didn't want to start. I think she wanted to introduce Estrillita. So. Okay, all right, we're waiting on y'all. Mom's en route.
Okay. Eric, can you still hear me? Can you hear me or you turn me off? Hello, Eric. You can't hear me, can you, Eric? That's it.
Hey guys, she can't see us. We only can see her. She can see me. Does anybody want to come down here and say hi to her before she gets started? So you can say, yeah, come on, come say hi, so she can see who she's talking to. They don't need to know who she is to say hi. Blue, you do though. You do though. You do. You know her. Or why don't you come down here and say hi? You won't even think about it. There you go. Yeah. Yep. There's a camera coming down here. I'll do it like this so y'all can see better. There's a bunch more of them, but they don't want to come down. They just got done eating.
I'm on my way.
Can you hear me?
You guys, I appreciate that.
Can you hear me? Did you have a good lunch? Can
What's up,
you hear
Rich?
me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Remember this guy?
Oh, I think I do. Hey,
Are you muted?
I am muted. No.
Oh shit, I just heard her voice.
Yeah, I heard it.
Hello, can you hear?
Oh yeah, we hear you. We hear you. We hear you. Yep,
Oh,
you good.
I've been talking. I'm saying he's got me off.
No, you're good. We got you. We got you.
I'm still at it.
Okay. Wait, I'm trying to. Who is this? You're looking down, so I can't see you. Who is that?
Yeah.
Huh? You said I'm looking down. Who is that?
Now you're looking up. Now I can see you a little better. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Raven
you
did
worked,
introduce.
you worked a lot with Richard, right?
Yeah.
I figured so.
He made me pose for his portrait in the class one time.
Oh,
6 hours in a chair.
you did not.
Yeah.
Really?
I'll
Oh
never
my
do that again.
God. I am too impressed. And you know what? I'm just gonna admit, I can't remember your name to save me, even though I remember faces. I cannot remember names. Give me your name.
Don't stand on them chairs. Don't stand on that chair.
No, yeah, don't stare at I won't, yeah. We ain't got
No
no money for
accidents
doctor.
today. No accidents.
Yeah. No accident.
So remind me about your name before you walk off the screen. I can't remember.
It was Blue. Everyone called me that back then.
Blue?
Yeah. I
Oh,
was the one Mr. Richards had his class posing for the portrait.
yes, you said you sat for 6 hours. I don't believe that. You sat for
Yeah.
6 hours.
He made me do it.
Oh my God. I gotta. Now, so he should have still the portrait of you, or did you take a recording at that time?
I think we got some portraits of him somewhere. We
No,
got
of
some.
you. The portrait
Oh.
he did of you.
Well, what he did with him?
No, you did. He did a portrait of you.
Yeah, he had the whole class paint me one year.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember that big sexy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Nick, I didn't choose. He just pointed and said, Raymond, sit down.
Here comes mom's now. Mom's
Yep.
going down.
Well, I'll see you later.
Okay.
Hey,
Okay,
Eric,
I'll see you later, Blue. Take care.
come
Good
down here
seeing
for a
you.
minute. 'Cause my son is here and he used to be in Richard's class too.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Hey, coach, come down here so Estrillita can see, because the camera only faces this way. So I wanted her to see a few people to see, so she could
This
see.
is Coach Brown.
Yep, Coach Brown is here.
Oh, yes, we have chatted by email and text. All
Yeah.
right.
This is my son, he was. You was with the
Hey.
class a couple times, right? Yeah.
How
Yeah.
you doing?
All right.
All right. So who's with Coach Brown? Do I know?
I just wanted to see some people because she can't see that way.
Yeah, I can only see. Hey, is that Priscilla?
Yes.
Hey, how are ya? Good to see you. Sorry I can't see you in person.
Okay, well, just reached out. That's really, we're about to get started. Mama's
Okay.
ready.
Okay.
Madame is here.
Have a person that is going to be representative of
I can't really hear her, but that's okay.
artists that I mentioned to you the other night. This is Richard Fitzhugh, has been our visual arts instructor for many years. And that prompted us to focus on visual arts this year. I talked about the t-shirts that he would create for us every year. And this is one of them that he created. But every year he would do a different one for the many years that he was here and that he had passed away. So we were lucky enough to get his wife to tell us some things about him as an artist and personal things that we may not know. And so today I'd like you to listen very carefully to Miss Estrillita Fitzhugh. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Priscilla. So I am really honored today to speak to you about my deceased husband, Richard Fitzhugh, about him as an artist, his paintings, and his many passions. Okay, so the photo should come up of Richard sitting with his, that should be the opening picture we saw. earlier? And yes, there we go. That's him in his studio in the basement here in DC. And I will just tell you, my name is Estrillita Fitzhugh. My maiden name is Jones for a reason. I'm giving you that for a reason you will find out later. Okay. All right. So as you know, Richard taught art there at that time, week-long summer camp. And I believe he taught there for about 20 years. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. So Richard came home from one of the summer camps, I recall, and he brought home with him the styrofoam plates on which his students would mix their paintings. He taped them to the wall in our kitchen and to the wall going down the steps to his studio in our basement. Now, I have to admit, I had to get used to this so-called unique art display of styrofoam plates. But to this day, these plates are still here in the kitchen. Richard's art style was very wide-ranging. He would use a very precise style to depict a future building or a community of buildings and apartments. Next. Eric, you want to hit next, the next painting? Next slide.
I was trying to, I'm doing something wrong. Is that it?
There we go. This is an example of architectural rendering, and he called it. Well, that's what it is. These renderings were a guide for construction companies to build their future projects. So see the extreme detail and precision, and the companies use that to base their plans. Next. On the other end of the spectrum of Richard's style, he had a very loose style, such as these two abstracts. And he had also in between the two of really precise and abstract, he had every style in between. Next. And what you see here is fairly realistic, but a little loose. It's a place in Washington, DC at 19th and Florida. And note the softness of the sun. It's at the end of the day. It's at the end of the day and the softness of the light as the sun starts coming down. Richard almost exclusively used watercolor in his medium, and this is a watercolor. In the case of architectural renderings, which we just talked about, the precise style, he told me he sometimes used something called gouache, which is a mixture of watercolor and acrylic. In this case, he painted the color white when he used gouache. But when he painted only with watercolor, he did not paint the color white. Let me show you next. This is also watercolor. Well, anyway. Did you see the 14th Street Bridge? Do you see that coming up, Eric? Probably
What's that?
not. Okay, that's okay, never mind. So here's an example of his mini styles. Here is a picture, two pictures of Rock Creek Park, a large park here in Washington, DC. And here's one of Rock Creek Park in the spring. See the greenery, the spring, all the grass and blooming is alive. And then you see Rock Creek Park in snow, showing the mixture and the type of style he used. Okay, next. Okay, here's another example. Brucella, I think Richard did this for you. Am I right on this, pen and ink? Another type of style he used? I don't know, but yes, so here's another example of a type of style and the varied style he had. Next, there we go. This is an example of how Richard would, when he used watercolor, he did not paint the white. That white is not painted. It's the original on the canvas, and he would paint around the white for the shape that he wanted to create. So you see that white along the top of the fort. This is the 14th Street Bridge. And below is the Potomac River, and all the little whites, he did not paint that. He painted around to get the shape he wanted of the original white on the canvas, okay? Next. All right, we're gonna have a little fun here. I want people in the class to guess what this is.
A moth, I'm not sure, an alien, a beetle.
Eric, you're gonna have to repeat what they're saying. Go
They're
ahead.
saying a moth, an alien, a beetle, mushroom.
No, restroom?
What'd you say?
Okay, go ahead.
Eye,
No, I'm gonna give you a hint.
praying mantis.
Uh,
That's-
These are all
Oh,
good
Jack
guesses.
Mantis.
No,
Train station.
no, I'm gonna give you a hint. You often use it in the kitchen.
Spoon.
Yeah, you picked that. That's right, it's a spoon and see how it's turned upside down? See how it's turned, the curved part of the spoon is turned down and the handle of the spoon is coming straight at you. Can you all see that?
Yep, they see it. They say, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so next. Richard also did artwork in 3D. 3D, as you know, is three-dimensional, okay? And here's an example of one of his 3D art pieces, and it's obviously abstract. Next. These are self-sketches of Richard. He did that. When he sketched, he often used charcoal, and later he would use Sharpies. He told me that Sharpies felt more like painting to him, okay? So here we see 3 of his self-sketches. The first one on the left shows a whimsical, easy personality. The other sketch in the middle shows a more menacing character, someone a little scary that I would not want to be caught in an alley with. I think because Richard didn't have anything menacing about him, I think this really reflected his serious nature. When he focused on something like a laser-like focus, he undertook everything. And this shows more his serious nature when he did this self-portrait in the middle. And of course, the one on the right is just showing a more serious Richard. So you see the many sides and the many techniques and the many attitudes he had about himself, okay? By the way, in the sketches, Richard filled some 35 sketchbooks. He sketched wherever he went. He sketched outdoors, indoors, on trains, subways. He used pencil, Sharpies, pen and ink. Next. Okay, here we have 3 examples of Richard's paintings. They absolutely are full of energy. His energy was always imbued through his artwork. They pulsated with life. If you look at the 2 pieces of New York City, and that's the large one on the left and the lower one on the right, you know, and then there's one of Washington, D.C. up in the upper right corner. I mean, you can almost hear the noises of the city on these paintings. You can hear the cabs, the hustling, the bustling of people, the noise of the city life. And he always used a lot of energy when he painted. He liked, as I think I mentioned before, he liked the challenge of watercolor. If I didn't, I'll say it again. Because when you use watercolor, you have to move quickly before it dries. And he loved that challenge. And so this is part of the reason why he was such a prolific artist and he amassed a large collection of work. Next. Okay. So, I'm going to skip to this. Okay. Okay, so while he was living in West Virginia, while he was living in West Virginia, he was commissioned, that is asked by the state, to do a painting, a historical scene at Harper's Ferry in West Virginia, okay? If this is historically true, and he was asked to create a scene of what happened at Harper's Ferry in the early 1900s, okay? This is a painting of members of the Niagara movement. And the Niagara movement was the precursor to the NAACP. You all know what I'm talking about, I'm assuming, of course. And so it shows, he did some research, but obviously to do the painting. It shows that the members of the Niagara movement were paying tribute to a well-known anti-slavery activist called John Brown. And here it shows, like I said, the Niagara movement began in 1905, and it sought to increase civil rights to African Americans. The Niagara movement was founded by W. Du Bois, I think he's probably the most famous, and then William Trotter and Mary Talbert. And in this scene, and this actually happened, members of the Niagara movement walked to the so-called fort where John Brown was captured some years before by troops because he so violently opposed slavery. He wasn't just opposed to slavery, he was violently opposed to it. And he was held up in this building where there were lots of guns and a lot of military and ammunition. So when Richard did the research to do this painting, he found out that if you look on the lower right side, he found out that members of the movement are taking their shoes off. See in the lower right corner, someone's lifting and removing their shoes, and you see umbrellas. Because he had read that the day they paid tribute to him, it was a wet, rainy day. And that explains why some of them had their shoes off and why you see umbrellas, one in the lower right corner and an umbrella far in the distance as they curve around to the fort. W. Du Bois, if you go back to the lower right corner, you see his face is turned away almost toward us. That's W. Du Bois, who was one of the well-known founders of the Niagara movement. And this is, as it says across the top, this is the called Marching to a Monument of Freedom. This particular painting, the National Park Service, when they did their 2016 centennial, featured this painting. And the original of the painting still hangs in the Harpers Ferry Museum today. Next.
All the fact and staff opted that when he did. So I had that hanging in my living room.
Estrillita, Coach Brown said when Richard did this painting, he gave all the staff a copy. And Gary said, yeah, Gary has a copy of this hanging in his living room.
Oh, good. I was going to ask that because in return, the state really did some really nice copies of the original painting. So I'm glad, yes, that everybody, you said Coach Brown said that, has a copy of it. Yes, great. All right, so next. Okay, so in addition to art, Richard loved creating and building things. And here he is building his own small 2-story house on 3 acres of land that he bought in West Virginia. You see him holding that ladder as he gets ready to build the 2nd story. On the right side, you see him measuring. He was, he loved building and measure, and it shows him measuring for some aspect of the house he was building, okay? He virtually built that house by himself. He did have to have someone, he hired someone to come in to dig a well deep enough to give access water to his home. So you see him here in the early days when he was starting it. And I would visit him while he built this house. However, while he was building it, there was a lot not yet there when I was visiting. For example, before he finished the bathroom in that house, we had to go outside. And I even learned how to take showers outside, even in winter. I must tell you, I learned a lot while I was out there. But I was totally delighted when he completed that bathroom. To me, it was like one giant step for mankind. Okay, next. All right, so Richard, as we have talked before, designed a t-shirt, a different t-shirt every summer for the Academy, for staff and students to wear. So I see there that, as Brucella mentioned that, And there is Eric wearing one of the t-shirts that he designed. While I don't have a photo, you all can certainly take another look at his t-shirts. Here's something he designed for himself. He painted a 3-piece suit on a white t-shirt and white pants, okay? Note the detail on this so-called suit. 3 pieces, pinstripe suit, no less, a vest, a tie, and buttons. He buttons down the center of the vest. And of course, he tops it off with a flower in the lapel. This was his attention to detail and his rather whimsical nature. He also made, and speaking of him loving to make things, he also made our coffee table and the sofa in our living room. He also designed our dining room chairs, all of which are still here. Next. Okay, so this is part of his love of adventure. And I happily joined in. So here it shows first on I'm going to start with the painting on the right, because he trained me to do the Marine Marathon in 2000. Do anybody know how long a marathon is? It's 26.2 miles.
Woo.
So he trained me, we trained together. He was already a seasoned runner during a time when running was not especially popular, and it wasn't even considered that healthy. He had learned, he lived in Guyana for a number of years. And at the time he lived there, he was considered at that time the second fastest runner in that country, in Guyana. So we trained together, running progressively longer distances. And on the day, I think 2 days before the marathon, we ran the full distance, all right? Because we both wanted to be prepared. So on the day of the run, as we're making the 26.2, by the time as we neared the finish line, I was flagging. I was really flagging. And Richard yelled at me, "Jones, kick in. We're making this under 4." So as I told you, I would use the word Jones because that was my maiden name. He would call me that. "We're making this under 4." And we did. Not once did he leave my side when he could have left me in the dust and waited for me at the finish line. So the second big adventure we did together is on the left, the picture. We hiked the southern part of the Appalachian Trail. This was done in around 2004. So for training, what we did is we loaded our backpacks with rocks and hiked around a lake near where we lived. And here we are in this picture, we are beginning our hike at it's called Amicalola Falls in Georgia. You will note the rocks on each side. To start the Appalachian Trail in the south in Georgia, they built this arch all the way around of stone. So it's showing us getting ready to start. The backpacks, we had been trained. Everything is in that backpack, including a tent. You see the thing rolled together under Richard's backpack, that when we slept at night, we had air mattresses that we blew up. They were small, thin air mattresses. We're not talking thick mattresses here. And when it rained, we had black plastic bags to put over our backpacks. It also shows our walking sticks, which were absolutely essential. See those walking sticks we're wearing? Because if the terrain got rough or we had to go kind of up a hill, that was excellent for balance. And there were many a time that sometimes the trail was washed out, so we had to learn to go up and around it because it was too sloshy to slog through. Okay, next. So Richard, as you know, as many of you know, oozed positive energy from his very pores. He took in stride the progressive nature of his condition that was now beginning to emerge, and it was called aphasia, A-P-H-A-S-I-A. He was diagnosed with this slow-moving dementia in 2012. He was able to paint until 2022. He retired from the academy some years before that because his ability to speak, to remember, to comprehend slowly diminished. In 2016, I recorded a conversation with Richard and asked him what he thought about his aphasia. He didn't hesitate. He said he wasn't worried. He assured me he wasn't worried at all because he was happy as long as he could paint and jog. Those were his two favorite activities. So I am so grateful his condition did not get him down. As he once said to me, I like colors to dance on the canvas. My hands just take over to do the work. And that is a lot of his work at one of the many exhibits that he did in DC and Virginia. And that is it.
Do you have time to take some questions, Estrillita?
Well, yes, I do. I'll take questions, but I also would like to hear from those who worked with Richard at the Academy over the years. And I'd like to also hear from them, and maybe we'll do the Q&A afterwards. Is that okay with you, Eric?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great.
We're taking questions. Now, we have any questions?
Oh, you take questions first? Okay.
That she wanted to do the people first.
Oh, you want to do the people first? Okay.
Yeah, so that if they have comments, the kids will have questions for them too.
For her to hear you guys, you'll need to come down here.
Oh dear.
Did
Yeah.
she hear what I said at the beginning? When
I hear you now, Priscilla.
Yeah, just barely.
Oh, okay.
But this is the mic right here, though.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you well now, Priscilla.
I don't know if you heard what I said when I introduced you or not. But
I did.
Okay.
Go ahead, please repeat if necessary. Right. No, I heard you. It was a little harder, but I did hear you.
Yeah. I did mention that Richard was one of the founding members of the Academy and had been with us for many years. And he had been the sole designer of our t-shirts. Every year we had a new t-shirt that he had designed for us. And you were right in the number of years. He was with us for about 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was a lot of t-shirts designed.
Right.
And I also have the same picture that Gary mentioned that he has. But we have ours in the museum in Anstead. And
Oh.
yeah. So I have lots of really nice memories of Richard.
Mhm.
And Gary,
Yeah.
you want to come down and say something?
Well, while Gary's come down here, I'll say a couple things too.
Okay.
Richard, you're definitely right how he loved to run. I remember us doing the camp up at WVU early mornings and after, and sometimes in the evening, you can catch Richard going out for his daily run. And like you said, it's just this positive attitude. It was such a contagious thing, you know. And we have, you know, how you do this camp and you run into little issues and staff, and he was always, hey, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be good, we'll figure it out. And yeah.
Was he also a camp counselor? All of you all were staff and camp counselors. Is that right, or am I wrong on that?
Say that again.
Was what most of you, as you were not only teachers, but were you camp counselors? Oh, it's not important.
Or some of them counselors.
Camp counselor.
Well, Eric himself was a student, and then he was a counselor, and then
Okay.
he was a teacher, and now he's
Got
an
you.
administrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was there for all that.
And I just want to add to what I said is that Richard and my husband Norman, who started the camp, were very close to each other.
Yes.
They were very fond of each other and
Yes.
really appreciated each other's art. I remember them being together a lot.
Right. I remember him talking about Norman said this, Norman did that, Norman. He was always talking about what Norman did and said.
You got to speak into that.
My first memory of Richard is when we were at Camp George Washington Carver. He used to bring down kids from Martin's West Virginia, in
Yeah.
his van. And they would have the,
On the train, you said, did you say on the train?
in the van.
Oh, his van. Oh,
He had
yes,
a
his
van.
van.
And
Right.
so, but his workshop was underneath like a pavilion that he would draw at Camp George Washington Carver. He would draw there and have his students there. And I can remember that, but I mean, there were many things. I remember his love for tennis. But one of the things that he did when we went to Martinsburg and then West University, he started like a big brother, big sister talk. And we would all, the girls would go with the women and the boys would go with the men, and they would just discuss things about their lives and how it affected them. And it made a big impact on all of those students. And they opened up not only to him, but to everybody in the room. And, you know, he was able to help them through some of their problems they were having in school, in their community. And it was a big inspiration, not only to them, but also to the people that he was working with.
Wow. Yes. Oh, that's really fabulous. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. At his memorial service, I looked up and I really hadn't expected this, but one of his little brothers, you know, he was, like you said, he was a proponent of that. And when I would visit him, we'd always come around and visit some of the little brothers he was involved in. One of his under the big brother's little brother showed up at the memorial. Next thing I know, he's walking down the aisle to speak. I was just such a delightful surprise. He had come from Martinsburg and drove in to speak at the memorial and hadn't told me he was going to do that. So it was a very moving experience for me, and obviously for Aaron. That was his name, Aaron Mann.
Okay, do we have any questions now? They asked, do you personally do any art?
No, my role is to be an appreciator of art. That's my role. And I really learned a lot about it, seriously, a lot about appreciating art. For example, Richard did, as you know, a number of abstracts. And there's just a general instinct for people when they see an abstract that it has to make sense. They have to tell you what's in it. And there's really nothing in it, but you just get a feel for whether you like it or not. And that was one of the big things I learned from Richard, how appreciating abstract as an art and accepting it as it is in it's all of its beauty and shape. I remember one of those things, but no, I am not the artist. I am the appreciator.
What's our favorite type of like painting? So like portraits, landscape, scenery, abstract.
He was asking you what your favorite type of painting is. You said abstracts, portrait, or
Like
scenery. What's your favorite type, personally?
Oh boy, it's impossible to know a favorite. You know, there's so many of his pieces that I really love. And I'll just example the one I showed of, I think it was 19th in Florida, and the sun coming down and that soft, at the end of the day, air. That was one I loved. And the two abstracts that I put up, I have a few more in the house, but I loved the two abstracts that he did as well. So trying to think, there's really, I would say the looser style. I mean, the precision is impressive to see that the two renderings that I did at the beginning of the show, but I would say his looser style, like the one I just mentioned at, what is it, 19th, I forget, 19th in Connecticut. I tended to prefer that style. but it's wide ranging in itself. Yeah.
Lori, her hand up.
Lori?
Do you sell prints of any prints of his work?
They wanted to know, do you sell any prints of his work?
The only print, no, not really. These are all originals, and I have not taken, I think in one instance, a few years ago, we both thought it would be nice to sell prints, and we made a few of them for a show, in fact, for 2 shows, I think. But apart from that, and there were so few, I can't say there really a lot. I'd have to go and look and see if there were any that are still in his studio, in his basement. But for the most part, we didn't do a big thing about selling prints. We were generally sold the original. And if you go on his website, he sold different sizes also. He had the smallest, like 9 by 12, and then would go up to, I think, 24 or 30 inches, the large ones. So the varied was more in the size of his originals.
Estrillita, this is Brucella again.
Yeah,
I mentioned that one of the books that I wrote about Ann Spencer, and you did actually have one of the pictures he did
yes,
in that first group that you showed, the house that she was raised in.
yes.
So he worked with me on those creations, about 3 or 4 different pictures depicting her life. That was a nice combination of work between him and me.
Yes.
But I wanted to say too that, and I don't know if this is common of all visual artists, but Richard took pictures everywhere he went. He was always taking pictures of different things and then painting the pictures of the places you all visited. I remember once you all went to Greece, and he came back with a lot of beautiful pictures that he painted from that experience.
Yes,
And,
yes, you're right. I mean, if I'd had, much more time, I would have gotten into that. We, as a birthday gift to me, because he knew I loved seeing the photos of Greece. I don't know, I'd see them in books. As a birthday gift to me, we went to Greece together. And so we ended up loving Greece so much. We went back, 3 or 4 more times. Every 2 or 3 years, we'd get our pennies together and go off to Greece. But he took a lot of photos, not just of Greece, but in the earlier years, he painted on site. Like he'd go to Rock Creek Park, set up his easel, set up his painting palette, and they were miniature, so he could travel with them. And then as time went on, he would take photos and come back to his studio and paint from photos. And I, once in a while, would do the same thing. I take photos of things that I said, oh, maybe Richard will like this. And I then would show him the photos. And it's funny, he never really explained, and I didn't need him to. He'd say, oh, I like that one to paint, that one, no, don't want that one, no, don't want this one, he just knew as an artist what he wanted to paint. So I would, once in a while do that. In addition, when he wasn't somewhere where I thought, oh, he's gonna love this, I would just bring them back and he would choose, yeah. So.
Got a question over here.
How did they meet and her first impression of him?
How did you meet and what was your first impression of him?
Okay. So a friend I worked with at the office said, I want you to meet this guy. He's my neighbor. He lived in Arlington, Virginia. I want you to meet this guy. He lives in a van. And why? Hold on. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
And he said he lives in a van. Richard always drove around in vans. And I was just struck by the fact that he thought I'd be impressed that I'd meet a guy who lived in a van. But somehow, I guess because he knew his personality. So that's how we met. He introduced us. This is a friend I worked with in an office many years ago, and we hit it off, immediately. But at the time, I was dating another guy who was a soccer player. So here we have, I was dating at the time, I was dating a soccer player who was just the opposite of Richard. Richard is thin and lanky. This guy was stocky, okay, like often soccer players are, you can't. So we just kind of hung out as friends. And then eventually, when I stopped dating the soccer player, since we had kind of just gotten along as two personalities, we eventually started dating. Now, when you start with Richard and I, you probably have broken the record. Richard and I started dating. We broke up and dated, re-broke up and dated. I don't know how many friggin' times, excuse my French. And people would say to me, friends would say, so where are you all now? Are you dating or are you breaking up? Because we did this 100 times. And part of the reason was I was ready to marry Richard before he was ready to marry me. Part of the reason was Richard was communication is very important to him. And the value of communication between friends and definitely between a couple is important. And he would say to me, in all honesty, but not to cast any, shall we say, aspersions, he would say, Estrillita, you and I need to improve our communication better before we take any serious step. And of course, in my desire to marry him, I said, oh yeah, that's easy. I can learn to communicate. I can do that. And so after going back and forth, we decided to make that commitment and got married. And don't you know, a few months later, we were doing some counseling for communication.
How long were you married?
It would have been in March. That is, what are we now? July, March 8th would have been 28 years. Yeah.
Pam, did you have a question earlier?
Oh, I do have to tell you, every time we had, it was pretty embarrassing, but it's true. Every time we had a wedding anniversary, I would always confuse our anniversary between two dates. I eventually got it, but he'd always remind me, no, it wasn't that date, Estrillita. We got married instead on another date. But I did eventually learn how to remember the date of our wedding. Go ahead.
His personality and the love he showed for all of us. I've never seen him angry. He just always impressed me.
I'm gonna try to get all that. She said,
Okay.
this is from
Okay.
Pam, one of our counselors. She said, let's do it again. I'm gonna go and break it up. I'll do it piece by piece. She was very impressed by his personality and the love that he's shown for all of us.
Wow.
He said he treated us all like he was his kids, even the counselors.
Hmm.
And I want to add something too. My mom said it really just stuck in my head and hit me hard. Is this him and my dad were really tight.
Yeah.
And really it was my dad, Richard, and Coach. They were a little crew.
Mhm.
Yeah. You see them all, they would be together all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I remember.
you already talked about cookies.
What?
My mom wanted me to talk about the cookies because every time I talk to you, I talk about the cookies.
I know, and you were going to get some cookies. You were going to get them. I had hoped to start cooking them today, but I didn't. You will get the cookies, and you'll have to give me a forwarding address to get them to you, and also to you, Brucella. I'm assuming you eat chocolate chip cookies. If you don't, that's just more for me to eat. Trust me.
Any other questions? I think that's it.
Okay, Estrillita, seems like everybody that had questions have asked them.
Okay.
And we just want to thank you so much for bringing this information to us about Richard. He was very special to all of us that have worked with him over the years. And you were the closest next thing to him.
Yeah,
So,
right.
very special opportunity for us to have you speak about him. And we did have visual arts this year as our theme. And Richard had a lot to do with us making that choice. So thank you very much for bringing this to us. I know that you had planned to be here in person. It didn't work out, but this Zoom presentation worked very well. And I'm glad you were able to do it like that. Yeah.
Well, it was my honor to come and talk with you all since he had such a love and, you know, just loved going to the academy, as I said. And I just, I'm glad to be able to, you know, share his memories with you all because you were such a big part of his life. I thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Right.
Right, so I'm gonna hit leave the meeting and there we go.
All right, can it be saved?
I recorded it.
Okay, because Jackie missed it.
Yep, I recorded it.
Okay.
This is.
All right.
Put this on the
Bye,
website.
you guys. I don't think you can see me, but I'm just saying bye.
Okay,
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.